And that's perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. If you really think about it, the real challenge is, was I able to solve whatever challenge I was presented with? And the answer is yes, you were able to solve the problem. So, had you had the same thing happen on customer's firearm, you're drilling through and then using a tap to get it back out is a perfectly acceptable solution.
Okay.
So, no, that's fine. All right, so share screen. Why isn't it there? Let's try again. Share screen. There it is. And share. Okay, so go ahead and maximize that. So when you are looking at different tools, right? Um, for the barrel that I got to go with my compensator or my SIG 365, my 320. The muzzle brake wasn't threaded the right way, or the threads were buggered a little bit. So, if you're gonna buy, whenever you go to buy your tap for that, always buy the other half.
Okay.
That way, if you just need to clean up your just so like in this case, here was a cap that came with it, right? So
Right.
this worked just fine, but the what I had to go over it did not. So, if you have to recut the thread, which you may have to do sometimes, chances are you have two challenges. Either the thread in here has grit in it, or is buggered, or it just isn't slightly clean. And so the tap will do a good job on that. But it never hurts to also have the die to clean up the threads on the barrel end too. So if you're gonna buy them, go ahead and buy them as a set.
Right. That makes sense because I got the tap from SDI and I don't have any dies that I could have fixed the screw that I cross threaded.
Right.
Luckily it wasn't too bad. Just
Yeah.
I had a steel bristled brush that I just kind of cleaned it up with that.
And that works pretty well most of the time. Um, but it never hurts. Again, if you're gonna buy one, buy the other. That way you always have it. And as you can see, this one works pretty well. I mean, so these threads were in good shape. Um, but yeah, and trying to do the muzzle brake lock on there, I couldn't get it to thread past a quarter turn. So, clean that up, worked fine. I didn't have to worry about the barrel threads. But in the event that you ever do, again, it's always better to buy them in a pair, and always keep the pair together.
Yep. Because the minute you store them separately, you're going to need the other one and you're not going to remember where you stored it.
Yep. Or it's gonna be, oh well, I put it in that box over there somewhere.
Yeah.
So, all right. So in looking at 1911s, now you did say that you are signed up for the 1911 class, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you gotten any more information on that class regarding what the 1911 is that you're going to get?
I have not seen or heard anything as of yet. I know I start the second 16 weeks in not this following week, but the week after.
Okay. Okay. Well, just something to take a look at. I think I was telling you last time, eSarco, so e-sarcoinc.com, has good builders kits. So you can get everything minus the frame.
Okay.
So you can get a new production commercial frame. I mean, a slide, with normal sights, or you can get the government slide, with your standard government sights. But all the guts and all that kind of stuff. So last time I was looking at them, the builder's kit minus frame was running 245 to 280, which
Okay.
is all your springs. I mean, it's all the guts. All you need at that point is a frame to fit it to.
Which they will be sending me one.
Yep.
So
So that might be something to look at. The 1911 builder, I know I gave you that site, and they've got the 80% frames. I'm in the process of putting together an 80% build class, because I've had a couple people who have asked if I would do that, since I've got the tooling, and so they'll actually purchase all the parts and bring it, and we'll spend a day doing all the fitting and putting everything together, which would be kind of fun. But so those are different options. Now, when you're looking at 1911s, what, outside of the light and the rail, what is the first thing you notice it's different between these two?
the finishes and the compensator on the bottom one.
Yeah.
Yep.
What else?
Looks like the top one, the pistol grip's a lot fatter and beefier.
It is. The panels are a little bit thicker and they're a little bit wider. Okay. The other thing is this one has a full length guide rod.
For some reason, I thought that was part of the compensator, but
Yeah. So
now I
when
can
you're,
see it better. It's not. Okay.
yep. Now, when you're looking at your guide rod, they tend to screw together. I always buy them in two piece, because two piece is so much easier to work with.
Okay.
Okay. It's still not a lot of fun trying to get it all back together, but
Right.
it's easier than a one piece, right? And obviously we'll check and make sure it's clear. We don't have
Yep.
anything there. That's clear. So when you're looking at the guide rods, why might I want a full length guide rod? What does that do for me in regards to how the pistol performs?
I would say it provides more, keeps the spring from being able to flex inside the frame. So it provide a little bit more stability as it cycles.
Okay. The other thing is that, things that travel in straight lines are faster, right? So you're right. It prevents the kink. And there's a lot more play inside here than you think there is. It helps manage your recoil, because the spring's compressing straight back and then recoiling straight forward. So it's a little bit more efficient, right?
Right.
This 1911 and 45 ACP is running a 24-pound recoil spring, which is well outside of what most people say you should run. Okay, I think the factory weight is 16 or 18 pound. Running that heavier spring with the compensator, it has almost no perceptible recoil.
Oh, that would be nice. Because I like 1911s, and for it to have less recoil, that would mean I could teach my wife to shoot it.
Yep.
If she had the strength to activate the slide.
So a lot of people, when they go to activate the slide, everything they're trying to do is they're trying to pull here, right? It needs to be a push pull. So I'm going to push with my bottom hand, pull with my top hand. And as you can see here, I mean, I'm not even gripping at the bottom, but that push pull allows me to manipulate the firearm. So even someone who may not have a lot of upper body strength or have the arm strength, if they push it and then bring it back, they push and let go, they're able to actually function or manipulate the pistol appropriately. So
Okay.
that might be something to try with her.
Yeah.
Right. Now, when you look at this, right, so we've got our magazine release here. We've got our grip screws, and these are going to bushings that are screwed into the frame. And then we have this pin here. This pin is going to hold your main spring in, which is located here, right? Up top, so mechanical safety. Then we've got our spring plunger tube and your slide lock. So when you're looking at these things that sometimes will give you issues is this plunger tube right here. That plunger tube, let's see if you can, here we go. See how you have those two pegs?
Yes.
So those two pegs go through the frame, and then you actually flare out the hole inside. You flare it out to hold it in place, right? So, depending upon how deep the hole was or how wide the hole was, if you didn't drill it the right way, if you opened it up, that can give you some issues. So that's something to pay attention to, and you have to have a staking tool to be able to get that plunger tube installed again.
Interesting.
Most of the time, your frames are going to come with it. Now, inside you have two pieces, right? And they're connected to a spring. This end is actually going to your safety. That's what's right here. And then this end is what's pushing against your slide stop.
Okay.
Okay. The tool, if you notice it doesn't go back in, the tool for that is two different sized drill bits on a screwdriver handle, and you do it by hand. So if you over drill, the front plunger will go too far forward, and it can be a challenge to get your slide lock back in place.
Right.
Okay. So I'm gonna set this to the side, and we're gonna take apart the other one.
Okay.
So again, they're the same gun, just slightly different in configuration. There's nothing in the chamber, nothing in the magazine well. This is a Colt Series 70. And it's got the factory spring and the factory guide rod, which only goes to about here.
Right.
Okay. So when you're going to take this thing apart, first thing that you're going to do in this particular case is it's easier if you lock your slide with this mechanical safety. And then on this end, we depress, and you're going to twist, if I can get it just right. Of course, they make wrenches for this. And
Yeah, I got a little pocket tool from Real Avid that has the I guess
yeah,
it's called the bushing wrench for the 1911.
yep. And those
But
are wonderful.
yeah, but before I got that, because I just recently got that, before I got that, I would grab a punch or a pen, whatever I could get to force that end cap off the
Yep.
guide rod.
So once we have our recoil spring and a recoil cap, now this spring's loose, our bushing is loose, right? So the reason I like to do that first is it makes the rest of this process easier because we're not fighting against the spring. So I'm going to line up those two holes or the half moon cut there. So
Yes.
I can push it through. This comes out, right? And from there, it comes off. Now, your bushings will come in any number of different configurations. Like this one is a split bushing. Now,
Okay.
some people tell me it's higher quality. It was put in the Series 70 by Colt because it was the best that there was. Um, I think these work just fine.
That's the one that I've got on my SIG 1911.
Yeah, so with this, places that you may want to do some sort of polishing work is on the inside right here, because that is what's going to ride along the barrel as it slides traveling back and forth, and so polishing that helps take away any kind of rough surface that you might have, and it smooths up your action a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when we look at the link system, so the link system on here, sometimes these pins are notorious for just falling out. Sometimes you have to use a lot of force. So the link, if you have an issue where you're not getting enough lockup, right? Meaning as the barrel travels back, it comes down for it to load. As it comes back up to engage in the cutouts in the top of your slide, right? Which is what
Right.
locks the system together. If it's not coming up high enough, the issue is almost always going to be the link. Now, what causes that? Wear on these surfaces, right? Because you've got metal going into metal, traveling back and forth, you're going to end up with wear over time. So as these get shorter, we have to increase our lockup by raising it, and that is done by changing the link. The links actually are sold and are numbered 1 through 5, and so you measure from center on the top to center on the bottom to find out what that measurement is, and then you are measuring from where the barrel sits when locked up from here to here, and then you use that measurement to determine how much it needs to come up, and that's how you actually adjust your lockup, is with those links. So in other words, if I'm here, I need to come up higher. That measurement's what's going to tell me.
Okay, so just use the calipers and measure the gap off the side of the ejection port down to the top of the barrel.
Yep, from the top here, from the top of the slide to the top of the chamber.
Okay.
Because this end's called the hood, right?
Okay.
The top of the chamber. But that's how you would adjust your lockup. So if you buy surplus parts, right? So you buy a surplus barrel, or you buy like a maybe it's a Korean War era parts kit, right? You're going to want to check that lockup to make sure your lockup's correct. And then if you needed to adjust it, you'd adjust it with your link.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on that?
No, that it seems fairly straightforward. It's just one of those things that you probably, if you don't know about it, you're not going to know to check it, and it'll just give you problems. And I've seen people get rid of guns for less.
Yeah, me too. Yep, me. Now, with these grips, because they're wider back here, you notice I can't get to that pin,
Right.
the mainspring housing in. So to do work on this one, I have to take the grips off. I don't have a choice.
Okay. Now, typically, you just punch out the mainspring housing
yeah, you just punch that pin out and then no problem.
Okay.
Now bushings. So the threading on the frame itself for the bushing is pretty much consistent across all manufacturers. You can buy a tap to be able to rethread those. It's not uncommon for these to get wonky if someone's taking them in and out a lot.
Right.
If you're going to put them back in, or if you're going to replace them, like if you're using a hex head or a security nut or whatever you happen to be using, security torque bit, you make sure you replace this with whatever it goes with. So whenever you buy again both component parts, that way for a fact the grip screws are going to match the bushing that you're putting into the gun. And then on these, you're going to want to use Loctite to make sure that they stay in once you get them out. So make sure the threads are cleaned off, make both the frame and the bushing, and then go ahead and put your Loctite on the threads of the bushing, screw it in, and that'll lock it in place so that it doesn't come off with the grip.
Okay.
Do you use a sonic cleaner at all?
I do not have one right now.
Are you considering getting one?
I am thinking about it because some of this stuff, it'd be easier just to throw it in the sonic cleaner for a little bit
Okay.
rather than sit there and scrub it for 30 or 40 minutes to do the cleaning.
Yeah. So with the sonic cleaner, I mean, obviously depending upon which one you buy, like Hornady, has a couple of different sizes. If you think you're going to be doing 16-inch long rifle actions, go ahead and buy the one that will fit the entire AR-15 upper. Just I mean, it'll give you more space, and you've got a smaller container that you can use for most of your smaller components in a basket and not have to worry about it. Watch the temperature that you run it at. If I use Simple Green in my sonic cleaner. Simple Green at 125 degrees for 20 minutes will strip the bluing off of a pistol.
Definitely don't want to do that.
No.
Not unless I'm trying to refinish the whole pistol.
Right. So, I mean, I run it with a little bit of heat, but not a lot of heat. I like Simple Green because it's cheap. I can get it by the gallon. You can mix it with water. I tend to use it 100% as it is. It's environmentally safe. It's less damaging to us. Now, I've also used Ballistol, and I know we've talked about Ballistol in the past.
Yes.
I like Ballistol in the sonic cleaner. Problem is it's too expensive.
Right. Last week you'd mentioned on the Ballistol, you mix it with water. What percentage did you mix?
50-50.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a 50-50 mix.
Because I got a small 16-ounce container of it because I wanted to try it and see, but right now I've got a lot of CLP from when I was on active duty.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go through it, but I wanted to give the Ballistol a shot as well.
Yeah, give it a try. It 100% as it is, it'll catch in the back of the throat.
Okay.
It's got a distinct odor to it. I mean, it's safe for you, but it just has that smell.
Okay.
This armor's block that I'm using is by 10-8. So it's 10-8. And it's nice because your grip bushings will lock into different places on it. It'll hold it, flat to the block so that you can drive, your pins out. In this case, you notice you've got a cutout here. So when I drive this pin out, it goes into that cutout,
Right.
which is nice. So it helps in just keeping things straight.
Okay. I've got a round one that I've been using with the M1 Grand, and it's nice because it's helpful, but at the same time, it's round.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a round one that is for 1911. I've got a round one for an AR-15, to deal with the front sight of the standard, the A1, A2 front sight assembly, which is
Right.
fun. I I don't particularly like them very much. I like this one specific to the 1911 because that's what it was designed for. So
Okay.
it has your cutouts where you need them. So with that pin out, once you have that pin out, you can just push back on your hammer. Mainspring housing comes out. Now the mainspring itself is held in by that pin.
Okay.
Now this is where it helps to have multiple hands because you have to push down on that plunger. If you can see it. Can you see it in there?
Yeah, I can kind of see it. It's still in shadow, but I can tell that
You can see
there's
the
a pun.
right?
Yeah.
So you have to push that down and push out that pin at the same time.
Okay.
So I always try and get it caught on something. Go ahead and get your punch aligned on the other side. And then you notice it didn't come all the way out, right?
Right.
But at least that gives me enough to then be able to push that the rest of the way. So that pin comes out. And then from here, I can take that out.
Yep.
So this is what's going to engage in that pin at the bottom. That's what locks it in place. That's what holds the main spring cap on.
Okay.
This is what your the hammer strut goes into.
Okay. Yeah, I shot my ejector across the workshop today off the M1.
Yay!
Yep.
Oh, it was fun.
I figured it was going to happen, but luckily the way it went, it bounced off the side of a cabinet and landed right there at underneath the lip of the cabinet. So
Woohoo! Win.
yes.
All right. So to get your safety out, you want your hammer back, and then we're gonna wiggle. Come on. It's being ornery with me today. Right. So we have our mechanical safety off. Now, when you look in here, where did I put my what? That's gonna be too bright, I think. Yeah. Let's see if I can do it this way. Okay. So you see those surfaces inside?
Yes.
All right. So the your safety, these surfaces here are what engages between the hammer and the sear, right? And one of the things you have to pay attention to, especially when it comes to fitting, is you want to make sure that you don't take off too much metal on this surface. See where it's glinted right there?
Yes.
All right. So you can do some fitting, and some of that fitting is going to be, a real light file or stone right around here. If you think about the FT104 class where you were looking at files and stones, and files
Yes.
are used to remove metal, stones are used to polish or hone the edge. Um, this is where having the right jig makes a difference, right? I want to make sure that I have the right jig to hold this at exactly the right angle so that I'm running my stone or my file, across it, taking off exactly what I need. This is also a place where mechanics black or machinists black, which is just a black, basically black marker, right? You use that so you'll file or stone, and then use a marks a lot, paint it black, put it back in, do it again, and anywhere where that marks a lot still, that Sharpie stays, is a place that's fine, because where it's wearing is where you need to take it down, because that's where it's blocking. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Um, and that's the easiest way to do that. Something else to pay attention to is the distance, from the flat side of this to the underside here, right? Because this right here has to ride inside the frame. So if you can get it in, right, but it won't pop all the way in, or you can get it where it'll go in and it will almost go down. What's catching is the frame against that openness, that open spot.
Okay.
So in that case, you're just going to take your file, and it's just a file across here. So ideally, have a blind edge or an edge that has no teeth on it,
Right.
and then you just come around, follow that same contour. You're just taking off very little on each pass until you've adjusted that thickness so that it will actually pop inside the frame.
Okay.
Yep. Right. All right. So the grip safety is held in by by the pin here, which is why we have to take that out in order to get it off. And then once you have that, you're going to remove this pin here and that pin there. Once those two pins are removed, your hammer will fall out. You can come back in here. You can grab your spring. So you have a 3-leaf spring, and then you've got your disconnector and your sear.
Okay.
Now, next we're going to take out our trigger, right? We have to take out our magazine release to be able to remove our trigger. So for that, you're going to hold this slightly up, engage that screw, twist it so that it locks into the cutout here. And that's under spring tension.
Okay.
So spring and piece that engages into this cutout there.
Okay.
All right. And so when you're thinking about how much do I have to push up, you're really pushing up about halfway up this length so that it will turn in, because inside of your frame here, you have a cutout that that this piece runs into. And that's what holds your magazine release in.
Okay.
Once that's out, trigger comes out. Now, the fastest part of the fastest trigger job you can do on a 1911 is coming in and polishing the side surfaces of your trigger bow. Because these side surfaces ride inside the frame, right? So
Yeah.
if I polish here and I polish here and I polish here, then you can get stones that are specifically made. Let me get a flashlight. Yeah. Give me just a second.
Okay.
Okay. That's better. All right. So if we look inside our frame, all right, you see that cutout right there?
Yes.
Okay, so you act that like through Brownells, you can actually buy trigger bow stones. And those stones are designed to go in and hone out that slot so that it's smoother.
Okay.
So you polish the bow, come in and polish each one of those cutouts on each side, with progressively finer stones until you have that mirror polish. And then the next thing you'd want to do is come in here and you're going to want to polish. You don't actually need that for this. You're going to want to polish all of this on both sides, avoiding your sear surface
Right.
where your sear hooks are, right? So just on the side, and then come in with your stones, and you're going to want to get each side of where the hammer actually travels and stone that, and that's going to polish that up and smooth that up. Okay. And then the next thing that you're going to want to polish is the spade on your disconnector. You polish here. The reason for that is that the spade rests here on the trigger bow, right? And so it's going to travel up and down. So I want to make sure that this surface is smooth and this surface is smooth, so we have as little friction as possible on those two surfaces.
Right.
Okay. Then we're going to come in on our spring, right? You can see how the top of this one is glinted.
Yes.
So you take your file and you file it so that you end up with an angle on there. I don't know if you can see that angle. Kind of hard to see. But the purpose
I can kind of see it.
Yeah, it's very slight, but the purpose is that that's going to sit here, right? So instead of having a sharp edge to angled surface, which is going to cause it to catch, you match that same angle, and now it's going to slide instead of go.
It'll create less friction.
Less friction. And then polish the sides of your sear again, because these are the sides that are going to be in contact with the inside of the frame. And so if these are smooth and inside the frame where all that stuff is connected, is smooth, you're going to end up with a really nice trigger without too much difficulty. All right. Now, when we look at your safety, so the grip safety itself, the way the grip safety works is you've got this surface. Let me move this. All right, that's better. All right, so can you see how these surfaces sit?
Yes.
So when I depress the grip safety, it moves it up enough that now my trigger bow can come back. So when I release the grip safety, I've got metal on metal. When I squeeze the grip safety, it travels. Now let's take a look at that distance. You notice that's not a lot of space.
No, it's not.
So when you're talking about take up on a 1911 trigger, look how little you actually have. So you want to be careful that you don't take metal from here, right? Because
Right.
that'll change the way it functions, and we don't really want to take much metal from here. We just want to polish. Okay. Now, when you start looking at beaver tail safeties and that kind of stuff, your radius, your radius here ends up being cut based upon whatever the angle is, and they make a jig that you actually screw into the frame with this in there, and it's got cutters, and so you push this in against those cutters while you're spinning them, and then that's what actually cuts that radius here to match the radius of your frame, which is here.
Okay.
So it's this radius that you're matching. Because if it doesn't fit, what'll happen is it'll bind right here. That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. So any other questions on the parts?
Not right now. I know once I actually take a 1911 apart, I'll probably think of something.
I am sure. But if you do and you want to work on it together, just let me know.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do that. All right, so I'm putting it back together. We're going to put our trigger bow in first. So trigger bow goes in. And then we're going to put our magazine release in next. So for that, we take the spring and your pin. And we're going to go ahead and get that in place there. Catch the screw head. Maybe. There we go. Push in and turn. And then this will simply drop in here. If it's ever tight, meaning I should be able to do this, and it should be able to bounce just like it is right now, then
Yes.
you want to come in and you want to make sure you're polishing. Now,
Okay.
you have a choice to make. Do I polish the frame, which is a serialized number or serialized item, or do I polish my magazine release? The magazine release is cheap. So
So,
if you can, do your polishing here and around here instead of the frame itself. Because if you mess up the frame, you're in trouble.
yes.
So if you can, always try and do those adjustments to the piece, not to the frame itself. So you can see that slight angle that I'm holding it at.
Yes.
So I've got just a slight amount of space. I come in here, I re-grab my screw head,
You rotate it to the lock.
rotate it, and now it's locked. Okay. So your trigger when you're looking at this for your trigger bow, you should be able to tap it. It should come up and drop without any issues. If it comes up and it sticks, you've got some polishing to do somewhere.
Okay.
Sometimes the place where you end up having issues is actually with the shoe. The trigger shoe itself can be too long, and so
Okay.
it'll drag on the bottom of your trigger guard or on the top of that cutout. And so if that's the case, then you come in on the trigger shoe, because the trigger bar and shoe is cheap, frame is not,
Right.
and you're gonna take that metal off of those surfaces until you get that nice smooth travel.
Okay.
All right, next we're going to do sear and disconnector. So the sear sits down on top of the disconnector, and then all of this is going to go into the frame. This is going to come out the top through here, and this is what is reset by there it is. That's what's reset by the slide. So
Okay.
if we look here, this actually sits in this groove.
Okay.
Okay, so as the slide goes back, it forces this down, which then forces everything to reset. And then that center leg on that spring, as it's coming back up into battery, pushes this back up so that your sear sits against the spade like it is right there. See what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Okay, because now when I push my trigger bow back, this pushes, and then that's what actually causes it to release. Right. Oh, I didn't take apart the slide. I'm sorry. Well, I'll get the bottom together and then we'll part the slide.
That's what I thought you were going to do, is put the lower together and then work on the slide.
Yeah. So this is just going to sit in here. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that the disconnector actually sits in front of your trigger bow. Because what will happen sometimes is when you put it in, it'll drop behind it, and then you have to take it out and start over again.
Okay.
Okay. So you see how that's sitting on the trigger bow?
Can you get a little more light on there?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So we don't want it inside the trigger bow, but on the outside.
Right. We want it on the outside. Okay. Now, the small pin of our 2 is going to go through, and one side is not chamfered and the other side is chamfered, because the pin on one side has a lip and on the other side doesn't. So this actually sits in through here, and then we're going to slowly kind of manipulate it until we get it to go all the way through. All right, so that pins all the way through.
Yep.
We've got it flush on that side, and then See how the spade is moving with the trigger bow?
Yes.
All right. So next, we're going to take our leaf spring. So this leg actually is going to hook on the sear. This is what's going to push on our spade, and then this is your grip safety.
Okay.
So if you want more spring tension on your grip safety, you bend this out. You want less, you bend it in. You want more
Okay.
tension on your spade, bend it in. You want less on your sear, bend it out. You want more on the sear, bend it in. So this is how you adjust your spring tension on the sear and spade and all that.
Okay.
Okay. Hammer comes in here. Take our larger pin. It's going to go through there. And at this point, we're really where we want to be to then put our spring back in place. Now, before we put our spring back in place, let's put our mainspring housing back together,
Okay.
because we'll use that to hold the spring in place as we align our hammer spur or our hammer strut and our grip safety. Now,
Okay.
one of the ways to increase or decrease the trigger weight is put a longer spur on. Because if I have a longer spur, when it's under tension, I'm actually pushing that spring deeper in the mainspring housing, which is going to give me more explosive energy, which is going to accelerate the hammer faster, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So faster hammer, polished trigger bow, sear, disconnector, that's where you get that balance from. All right, so for this, we're going to go ahead and slide that in. And then I'm going to go ahead, I want to get this sort of positioned, right? So I'm holding it against, so it's in, but it's not in.
It's not interfering with the spring.
Right. And then from here, set it down on something firm, press in. And we've got it caught. So see where it's running across the top of that cup?
Yes.
All right. So once I've got it at least most of the way in, from here, I'm going to drive it in with the hammer. A little bit more tension off. Let's see if I can get that in a little bit better. There we go. So you want to, as best you can, you want to make sure that that's flush,
Right.
because that's what's going to ride against, the spring and everything else. I think I can get that in just a touch more. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so hammer strut out of the way. Spring comes in, and it's going to catch on that cutout in the frame. See the cutout at the base?
Yes, I see it.
So it comes in, catches there. And then let me shine a light on this again. All right. So can you see how the springs are arranged in there?
Yes.
Okay. Now, just to again, to hold it in place, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my mainspring and I just slide it on. That way it's holding it, right? And as you can see, you've got that center leg sitting on the spade, right? You've
Yes.
got your cutout sitting on the leg of your sear, and then the grip safety spring is in its position. Now up here, you can see that our disconnector is forced through the frame itself, and that's actually under spring tension. So if I press on it and I'm holding that mainspring in place, right? That spade where that it's riding is pushing that back up again. All right. So now we've got everything kind of where we want it. We're going to start to get that strut lined up so that it's coming in line with that cup. See it?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm going to bring in my grip safety. Grip safety is going to come in here. I can go ahead and catch this safety. Put our plunger tube spring back in. I can go ahead and catch it so that it's at least starting to hold it, right? And then from here, what I can do, if you can see in there, may not be able to. Can you see the hammer strut? Really
Kind of. Yeah, I can kind of see a glint off it right now.
okay. So I want to make sure that I have that back. I'm going to push, get that so it's where I want it. And I push this up into place. And when I push it into place, what I'm doing is I'm catching the tail of my grip safety on a lip on the back of the mainspring housing. Okay. Because that's what keeps it from springing out completely. See the lip?
Yes.
And then that's catching on the lip right here.
Okay.
Now, so this is holding my grip safety in place. I got my hammer forward so there's no tension on it. I'm going to take this pin, go ahead and get it positioned to where I want it. This is flush. And then from here, drive it in. Now, that's going to pop on that pointy end at the bottom of our mainspring housing. Now from here, I can go ahead and pull this out a little bit, get this cocked, and now I can come in and from, you can see that plunger, so that plunger piece is sitting just underneath
Yes.
safety. So what we're going to do is push forward and then down. And so that's reinstalled our plunger tube spring, our safety spring. We've got all of our component parts back together on this. So grandson sounds like he's having a hoot. All right. So let's go ahead and put our grip panels back on, and then we'll set this to the side. What I do like about having oversized grips like this is it sometimes as the mainspring gets weak, this pin will have a tendency to walk a little bit. So
Right.
by having it encased behind my grip panels, I don't have to worry about it coming out of the frame.
Yep, because that would be a bad day for that pin to drop off on the range and you not notice until you try to pull the trigger.
Yep. All right. Nope, set that to the side. All right, on your frame or on the slide, so your firing pin, that's the back of your firing pin. The firing pin itself is what holds on your firing pin stop and holds your ejector or extractor in place, right? So to get this out, you're going to push in and you pry it down.
Okay.
You pry that down, it'll slide out. Then you can pull your firing pin and firing pin spring out. And then this is where it gets complicated. Because, let's see. Let's see. All right. So can you see the extractor hook?
Yes.
Okay. If you look at it from this angle, all right, you see the hook right there?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So if I push that straight back, it's going to catch on my breech face. Right? So the trick is to push it back and then make sure it's pushed outside of that breech face so that I can come in here and pull this out.
So when you're pushing straight back on it, you kind of push back and
You push. So when I push
away
straight,
from the
push
firing pin hole.
away from the breech face, right? So I'm pushing this way.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you're having a gun and it's having difficulty extracting, right? But your extraction hook is in good shape. So, it's catching just fine. Are you with me?
Yes.
What you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to bend it this way.
So bend it towards the where the hook is overlapping a little bit further.
The hook is more aggressively towards the breech face.
Okay.
Right? So if we're looking at it, this way, right? What we actually want is we want to do that with it. Now, obviously, that's more aggressive than we actually want.
Right.
Right. But that's the idea. Now, if you don't have the tool, which actually, grabs here and grabs here, and then you have a screw here and you screw it in and it
pushes that middle out.
Does that for you. The other thing you can do is you can put this into your frame and you want to catch that fat piece right there on the extractor.
Yes.
Catch that just inside the hole and then push on it, and that will give you a slight bend to it.
Okay.
So you can actually do it with the hole itself. And then things to consider. Have you heard of 45 Super?
No, I haven't.
All right, 45 Super is exactly the same thing as 45 ACP, except the case is thicker. So it's rated to a higher pressure, right? So 45 Super is zinging out the end of the muzzle. If you're gonna do, if you start, doing that, or you start playing with 38 Super, 9mm, 10mm, 40 Smith, 400 core bond, whatever caliber you happen to play with, one of the things to pay attention to is that in the event that you're getting pierced primers or cratered primers, meaning the firing pin comes, here's your primer pocket, or the bottom end of the primer. When the firing pin strikes it, if you see a crater, like a divot, like a deep divot, and then kind of like this ridge. So from the side, it looks like this.
Kind of
So,
like it's trying to push the primer all the way through the casing.
well, so here's your case head. Right? And so this is your primer. What's happening is the pressures inside are so great that it's pushing your primer out and it's pushing it out at the same time the firing pin and everything is trying to extract, and so it actually wraps that primer, the primer cup, around the end of the firing pin.
Okay.
Okay, so the way you address that is you increase the spring tension on your firing pin spring so that it's extracting faster, and you would come in and you'd actually shorten the firing pin by polishing off, or just taking small amounts off of the end of the firing pin itself so that it protrudes less,
Okay.
and that way you don't end up with the pierced primers or any of those other issues.
For changing the spring tensions, would it just be better just to buy another spring?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I like Wolf springs, because like with a Wolf spring, I can say, well, I want to get, you know, a 12 pound, 13 pound, 14 pound, 15 pound, 16 pound, 1911 spring, right? And that way I can play with whatever caliber I'm shooting. I can play with, lighter or heavier depending upon how the gun is functioning with that particular caliber, right?
Okay.
38 Super, they say, is 13 to 15 pounds on the spring. I have one gun that I needed to run an 11.5 pound spring on because of slide weight. I didn't have to have as heavy a recoil spring because of the mass that the slide had. All right, for putting this back in, we're going to slide this back into our frame, and we match the angles. So matchy matchy, right? So come in, we want to make sure that that's matched in there. Then we're going to take our firing pin and spring and we drop those in. And then from here, get that aligned the way we want it. And then we're going to take our punch and we punch down. Now, if it doesn't quite go, most likely that's going to be because of where it's grabbing on the extractor, because there's a cutout in that extractor that the firing pin stop slides in.
Okay. So if we don't have that extractor exactly lined up, it'll stop the slide stop or
From
the
going the
firing
pins.
pin stop.
Yep. And so places that you might need to polish, you might need to polish here, and this is on the firing pin stop itself, right? So you might, if you're getting it caught and it doesn't seem like it's wanting to go in and you've got everything aligned the way it's supposed to, take your file, use your blind edge against the middle of the stop, right? But we're going to file off where that piece goes into the slide and into the extractor.
Okay.
So you just take metal off of that. Sometimes you have to take metal off of here. I always try this side first because it's less filing, right? If that doesn't work, then I'll come in here and do it. Sometimes you may need to polish the firing pin hole, where that's coming through the firing pin stop. The other thing that's interesting is with the different caliber 1911s. Like Caspian Arms tends to run a 9mm or 38 super firing pin in almost all of their slides, regardless of caliber, right? So you may have like a 10mm firing pin. They're printing something. Yeah. I just had to move the things that would have been knocked over. Okay. But so you want to make sure that you know what size firing pin your particular slide is going to use, and the manufacturer will tell you.
Okay.
Now, if you're buying, so assume if it's a 9mm slide, you're going to need to have a 9mm firing pin. But also pay attention because these days a lot of 45 ACP is being loaded with small pistol primers instead of large pistol primers. And that's predominantly because that's what people can get their hands on. So, all right, with that back in, the other thing you want to check, the last thing you really want to check on this is making sure that this is flush. Because if this isn't flush, you're not going to be able to get it to engage the way you want it to. So always make sure that when you can run your finger or the pad of your thumb across your disconnection groove, across the firing pin stop, and that it's a smooth surface between the two of them.
Okay.
And then from here, we go ahead and we take our link, we get our link back in. Like I was telling you earlier, this one is really, the link pin is really loose. Now you can pin it or pin it, with a punch and tapping right on the edge where the link pin goes in to pin the metal over so that it helps hold it. But once it's under tension, I haven't had any issues with it. Your QR code didn't come out right.
Yeah, sure.
We can fix it.
It's only one page.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and get our bushing in place. Maybe. There we go. All right. From here, once our bushing's in place, we go ahead and turn it all the way to the side. We're going to take our link. We want our link all the way up. Now, if you're not using a guide rod or if you're using your standard guide rod, it's just a matter of feeding that through. Because we're using the frame to hold everything in place as we put it back together, go ahead and cock your hammer. We'll feed this in going to make sure that stays aligned right. A lot of times you can get it caught and get it started and then go ahead and bring it back so you have your matching grooves. Push it in. We're going to lock it again. And then from here, now sometimes they'll have a cutout right here on your recoil spring plug. That's really designed to catch that open end of that coil. So it just comes in and catches, so it holds it in place all the way down. Rotate, lock, fire, no fire, no fire, fire, done.
Well, now I just want to take my 1911 apart and play with it.
But again, it's plan how you're going to do it. Come up with follow your process. Keep all your pieces at close hand. But the beauty of the 1911 platform really is the fact that it doesn't matter who the manufacturer is, right? They're exactly the same. Now, para ordnance and their double stack with limited or light double action, that gets a little bit more complex, but the foundation of the gun is the same, right?
Right.
And a 2011, the staccato, from this part up, there is no difference. If you can put together a 1911 and match your slide and your hammer and your sear and all that kind of stuff, you can build a 2011, because the only difference is a grip module.
I never really did understand why they decided to change it up and call it the 2011. I mean,
I think that's the year it was introduced, and it was predominantly done for competitive shooters because they wanted the 1911 platform, but they didn't like the magazine capacity. The 38 Super 9mm that I've got, I can get 30 rounds in the magazine, which 30 rounds of 38 Super out of a 1911 is not too bad.
no. My thought on the competition guys is, if you want more rounds, learn how to reload faster.
Right? No joke. But there you go, brother. I mean, that's the 1911 in a nutshell.
Well, that was very helpful and definitely gave me some ideas on some ways that I want to approach the 1911 class, depending on what they tell me and give me. So
Yeah. Well, as you find out more, reach out to me. Let me know. If I've got any suggestions on tooling or tips and tricks, I'll happily share with you. And we'll get you squared away and situated. For your own information, the introduction to ammunition and ballistics class. It was BBS 100. They have redeveloped that class. It's FTT 122. And I should start teaching that one in June. I know that you've already had it,
yes.
but reach out to me. Because I'm going to be taking an Oler 43 ballistics lab to the range, and we're going to be shooting ballistic gel and doing chronograph and collecting ballistic data and ballistic testing as the lab I just like I do this for you guys, that's what I'm going to do for them. So if you'd like to get to participate and get some information, then there you go.
I definitely would like to see that, because the basic ballistics course that I took, it was interesting, but it was really dry because I'm not a math type person.
Okay.
And I think it would have been better to, some of the concepts and ideas that they present, it would be better to physically see it than just sit there and read about it on a page.
Yep. Well, I will, like I said, I'll keep you in the loop when that happens. And if you ever need something, John, I'm always here for you.
All right. I will probably tomorrow, when I finish putting that M1 Grand together, I'll send you an email with my contact information. That way, if you got any questions or need help with something, you can let me know.
You got it, brother. Hey, working together is how we're all successful. So
Yep. I agree, because it's like when I had Marines, they're like, well, why are you working so hard to train us? You're getting out in 3 weeks. It's like, because if you're better than I am, that means I did a good job. If you're worse than I am, that means I was a very poor sergeant and I shouldn't have been there.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I wish more people understood that.
Yeah. Too many people are thinking of themselves and how do I make myself look better?
Yep.
And the easiest answer is you make yourself look better by the people you train and teach, them succeeding.
The people you leave behind being able to perform to the highest standard is the greatest testament to who you were and what you did.
Yep. And I approach it this when I was getting my master's in history, when I was doing instructor stuff, I approached that the same way. If my students performed well and thought they could outperform me, then I did my job.
Yep. Yep. Well, all right, my friend. Again, if you have questions, reach out, let me know.
I will definitely do that.
Have a fantastic weekend. Celebrate Mother's Day with your lady.
I will.
And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Sounds good. I will definitely keep in contact, because I want to see the ballistics lab out in the field stuff.
You got it, sir. We'll have fun.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.